I'm Jay, an arts manager, educator, writer, musician, producer, and professional daydreamer.
And I'm Miguel, a musician, arts administrator, educator, and lover of all things nerdy.
And this is Playblack, a podcast dedicated to nerddom, reviews, and hot takes on arts and culture, and the human experience from the perspective of two melanated artists.
Just your typical anime bros, but with, like, master's degrees and stuff.
And therapy.
So much.
How are you? You know, I didn't tell you before this call came in, so I'm going to do this right now because I just remembered before we started. Kira's in town, and she called me and was just like, "What are you doing?" And I was like, "I'm not free. I have Playblack." She's like, "You should come out." She's like, "You both should just come out and do that." I was like, "But we're recording tonight." And she's like, "Oh no." So yeah, that happened.
I'm sad that Kira. Well, we miss Kira. For those of y'all who are listening and maybe new to us, Kira is a fantastic singer, music therapist, artist, actress,
model,
who has been on tour, musical theater tour for. Do you remember the show, Jay?
Sister Act.
Right, Sister Act, and is
Korea.
Right, but yeah, was doing an international tour, and also was a Playblack guest, and did a lot of spooky stuff for us.
Stuff, yeah.
It was a pleasure to get to talk to her, but also just to have her in our lives, and we miss her dearly. So if Kira ever listens to this, hey Kira, we love you, and we'll have you back on soon, probably for a Halloween episode. At some point. But Jay, how are you? What's going on?
Whew, what's going on? We talk a lot about how I have different things that I do, and normally it's fine when I don't always, the rhythm of the different things isn't the hard part. I think what's hard for me sometimes is when I'm forced to be in different types of brain. And I know that doesn't make sense yet, but I'll explain it. But it's just there's artist and creative brain, and that's one thing. And then there's admin, organizing, whatever brain, that's another thing. And it's very hard for me sometimes to flip between the two when creative brain requires all of me in a way, when I need to be there. It's easier to add creative into admin, but it's very hard to get admin out of creative and then switch over to admin and then get back to creative. And so, yeah, I've been writing, and I've kind of had to push everything else to the side. I don't like to consume a lot of media when I'm writing because one, I don't want it to infect my voice or how I think of something, and I never want to. I'm not trying to get sued too, so I'm just I'm not gonna have y'all be like, he stole this from me. So yeah, my life is falling to the wayside. No, it's not that dramatic, but I've just been writing, and it's been good, and we're almost done. That's the other piece. I'm on the second to last episode of this season, and it's the biggest. Most of them so far have been 26 pages. I'm currently on page 42, and I'm still not done for this episode, so it's a supersized one, which is why it's taking longer, but I'm finally starting to feel like I'm in flow again. But yeah, next week it's going to be all about admin stuff now.
The fun stuff, you mean?
It's not fun.
I'm so sorry.
It's not all the time. How about you?
There was a couple of professors of mine in college, and just a lot of people who work with professional musicians, and something that they told me when I was younger that I understood and believed but didn't know and understand was that professional musicians are basically just professional athletes because of the physicality of what we do. Yeah. And I am a professional musician, and I am in high school, really athletic high schooler shape right now.
Okay.
So I'm working my way up through, and for those of you who don't get sports references, I'm sorry. I'm okay, we maybe play D3 ball. No, all right, we're going to move up to D2. Okay, we're going to get to D1, and then we're hitting the pros. We're hitting the pros again. We're trying to get back up into professional athlete shape. because my
Yeah.
body feels like shit. It doesn't feel great.
Boy.
But we're doing it. We're making it
Yeah.
work. Taking the steps we need to make sure that I'm good and healthy, and also have the ability to make wonderful music. One of those projects is, of course, for you and Akeem's Alchemy, and all of that wonderful stuff. So it's going to be a summer of healing and a summer of creativity. That's the
Yeah.
goal, and a summer of Playblack.
I love that. Oh yeah, wait till we talk about that. Also, while you were talking about like moving up through all the D levels to get back to your peak athleticism, I was just like, this is very much giving like a training or recovery arc more so in anime. So you should call this your recovery arc, because that's exciting.
Yes, yes. You're not going to hear anything about it, and then I'll whip out special moves and be like,
Yeah.
flashback, I learned that from
Nani? Sugoi!
No, don't do it. Don't be that guy.
Anime bros. Okay, we still have to do that part, not always the master's degree in therapy part.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Today we are talking about anime, but specifically father fingers in anime,
Daddies.
where they excel, where they fail miserably, and everything in between, and why that topic seems to be very, very important to people of color, specifically men of color. Not what Don't want to get into any sort of tropes or anything, but it just so happens that we are a population that maybe sometimes struggles in the parenting department. Where I'm not going to just say
For a lot of systemic reasons and by design by this U.S. government. Okay.
that almost doesn't even have to be said for our audience. We all know why we struggle. Our populations and communities sometimes struggle with this sort of thing, but it's apparently just as pervasive in anime world. So we're gonna get into it. The episode is called "The Endeavor Complex" for a reason. For those of you who aren't familiar, My Hero Academia is coming back as the recording. As to this recording, I think 2 episodes are out. I've seen them. I don't think Jay has, but there is a character who I think is a seminal bad dad. And I think we're going to have a lot of fun discussing him and other bad dads. So without further ado, how about we get into the Playblack? So
Yeah.
the namesake for this episode, an Endeavor from My Hero Academia. Bad dad. He's currently kind of going through a redemption arc, and it has us wondering how we feel about the redemption and the complexity of the relationships between father and their children, especially as portrayed in anime.
So true. So true. Fun conversation. But of course, we kind of can't talk about fathers without discussing our own relationships to the concept. So, Miguel, what does fatherhood look like in your life? How's that come up for you?
It's interesting. I have a father. He
Okay.
no. He's great. He's a good person. He has his faults, just like any other person, regardless of being a parent. And as all parents do, they fuck you up a little bit. They have to. It's kind of like the idea. Yeah, I think I kind of got into that rebellious thing like later in life for reasons that I'm not going to super get into here.
Yeah.
So I think the relationship got more strifey and more what's the charged maybe. as I started to become like a man, which I think is probably a pretty normal thing, or an adult versus just a kid or a teenager. So I feel like it's the relationship in which I have the most like dislike of authority, which is interesting for sure. How about you?
Daddy wasn't there. That's my story. I mean, it's interesting because we talked about how a lot of the issues with, POCs and familial structures are so tied to the government and its manipulations of communities. But like, technically, that's not my story being first gen. So my mother came from Barbados alone when she was pregnant with me here. And so for a long time, like I gave my father a pass, right? I was just like, you literally live in another country, not going to be like a super present father. And I went to Barbados twice when I was younger. One time, my father he's a police officer, but also a cricket player. And so sometimes would come over for cricket and like I'd see him there. But I think after a while, like as I was like hitting puberty, honestly, um, we would just speak so sporadically. Like if I didn't physically see him, it was just rare that we'd have a conversation, it felt like. And then, and in like typical Caribbean man fashion, this man is a hoe. Okay. He a ho. And at that point I was the youngest of five of his children, which he had with four different women. And then when I was 10, my mom was like, "Oh, you have a brother. You have a new brother." And I was like, "Oh, cool. I'm a big brother now." She was like, "No, he's older than you. We just found out about him."
Oh,
Other woman. So it's just like,
classic.
cool. And so, yeah, it was just like, there was distance there. And I got to the age of like, okay, I'm kind of over you. And then hilariously, when I was in high school, he like emailed me, spelled my name incorrectly, was like trying
Jesus.
to admonish me because like I didn't give a fuck anymore, and had that weird, annoying like I'm your father things. Like, sir, what? I don't know you.
Mm-mm.
You don't know. You
No,
can't
no.
spell my name.
Mm-mm.
Um, and so then in college, my mom one day was just like, I had a dream. You know how Caribbean mothers are in their dreams. And she was just
Listen.
she was like, your dad died and you didn't go to the funeral. And I was just like, sounds about right.
About right,
And she was
yeah.
like, that's not good. You have to talk to him. So he started calling me again and was just like saying all these words. And I was like, sir, this is just such nonsense. And I find this so hilarious. Do you know what my father's last words to me were?
This is very dark.
He's
But
not dead, but his
okay.
last words to me were, and it really sums up our relationship. I'll talk to you tomorrow.
If you gave that as a like a spec script to like
Yeah.
any publishing company, they'd be like, rewrite this. That's not. That's, don't do that.
Yep.
Oh
Um,
dear.
yeah. So I don't really necessarily have a strong connection to fatherhood in that sense.
Mm-hmm.
I had a stepfather when I was growing up, but he was 30 years older than my mother, so it was like an older
Whoa.
man. And they were only married for like 4 years. So yeah, that's my relationship to it. Now, what do you think makes a good father? What's an ideal father, particularly in how it relates to like a father-son relationship? What's a good structure for that?
Yeah, I think someone who, hmm, someone who allows you to make mistakes,
Hmm.
but is there to catch you if you're going to fall too far.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like I've always been a pretty independent person.
Hmm.
Especially when it comes to my parents. I think part of that was being someone who spoke the language of the country that we were in,
I
and having
see.
parents
Hmm.
that didn't.
Hmm.
So honestly, in a lot of ways, my brother kind of raised me
Hmm.
in like the English portion of what was going on.
Hmm.
He wasn't that much older, but it was like sometimes it kind of feels that way.
That's so interesting. Like the
Yeah.
two worlds thing and having like two relationships to people based on that. Wow.
Yeah, for sure. Like I was the translator. Yeah, I was
Mm.
the when my brother wasn't around, I was the person who was constantly like, I went to job interviews with my dad at a very young
Mm.
age to like try to help him get, like it was so it's it was like I started to refuse help when I got to a point of independence in which I didn't feel like I wanted to owe anyone anything.
Mm.
So even when I might have messed up and it was like a step further than I could handle, I wouldn't ask for help.
Wow.
So I think a a good parent or father son relationship is like someone who like gives the help in a way that it will be accepted after letting you try and fail or try and succeed,
Mm.
because that I think allows you to build that character while also not falling flat on your face and maybe messing
Mm.
up your life for a few years.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oof. That's I'm like psychoanalyzing, but also like bringing in like a socio-anthropological sense into this because I mean, what you're talking about is there was a way you were cut off from your parents by being here and kind of matured by having to like be translator, but then also like you have a world that in a lot of ways you feel like you can't share or a world that exists without them in it that you're
Mm-hmm.
living.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting, like how and I guess there's a version of that we all feel like where we're like, the kid who leaves the house and then change clothes to go to school and they feel like they're a different person at school than they are at
Sure.
home.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it's giving a little bit of that, but like deeper in a way that's really interesting. So yeah, really, really. And I mean, and you didn't say this, but I wonder like, you then when you are serving as translator or having to help your parents that way, like it changes the dynamic because did you ever feel like you were the adult sometimes because of that?
Oh, sure. Sometimes.
Mm.
Yeah. Because there were certain things like they were smart people, but
Mm-hmm.
both of my parents, strangely enough, have like college degrees,
Mm-hmm.
but from the Dominican Republic, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my dad has a master's degree
Mm-hmm.
in like I think like agricultural business because
Mm-hmm.
agriculture is a huge like thing in DR.
Mm-hmm.
It's like their main export outside of baseball players.
Mm-hmm.
um,
Hilarious.
yeah. So it's like they're both very like intelligent people,
Yeah.
and have a good common sense. But then like America is so different that
Yeah.
that common sense doesn't always get you where
Yeah.
you need to be. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing. A tidbit that you might find interesting. I went to DR. I spoke about this on the podcast a decent amount for the first time in like 23 years with my
Mm-hmm.
parents last year. And it was a complete role reversal because they had agency there. Like they were the ones in control because they knew how everything worked and it was their home, their island. And while I'm fluent in Spanish and I was totally fine. Societally, I was like, "What is happening here?"
Yeah.
And it wasn't. I played like Dutiful Son for like 5 days, and it was weird because it was like I am a dutiful son, but usually I'm the one in charge.
Right. Mm,
And,
mm.
and here it's like I don't have like the space to in DR. I don't have the space to move around as independently, just because I just didn't have a groundwork for how everything
Yeah.
worked. So definitely an interesting thing. Jay, uh, what's an ideal father son relationship for you? Like what do you if you were to have a son,
Hmm.
how would you want that relationship to go?
This question is hard because I saw this study a few years back that talked about bisexual men as like partners and why in a lot of ways they were considered ideal partners, especially for women because
Mm,
they have less hangups around gender roles and they're more willing to kind of curate a relationship based on the people in a relationship rather than like societal norms and expectations.
Yeah.
And so I think sometimes, and I agreed with it, and I was like, that's true. Like, to me, the distinction between man and woman is often very arbitrary to me and feels very socialized. And
Yeah.
so it's hard to feel like, well, this is a mom's role in someone's life and this is a father's role in someone's life. And again, I don't have anything to like speak to that in my own life even. Um, and so there's a part of me that wants to answer this question is like, as a parent, what would I do for my child? But then there is another part of me where I say that even though I think the distinctions are often arbitrary, I
Yeah.
do think that there are differences between men and women. I've just experienced them. And so I'm just like, I do, which then makes me feel like there is a difference between a father and a mother. Um, I don't fucking know. It's part of the answer, I guess. Um, in terms of like the father I would want to be, I think and I guess I'm going to bring my educator brain into it. It's like I want to be able to hold space for it's three things. One, hold space for my child to be who they are and to be free to be who they are. Um, two, to make sure that they know that they're loved and that I join them in the things that bring them love. So I do believe in like parent and child dates where it's just like if you have multiple kids, like what are
Yeah.
you and I like having an individual relationship with each child around
Mhm.
their things that they enjoy and do, not always
Yeah.
like what you love to do and just bring them into that. Um, and then three, and this is the educator part, like making sure that they're equipped with tools and habits and ways of being that can set them up for success in the world. And I think that's like a level of emotional intelligence. I think it's a level of like how to communicate with people, how to understand themselves, how
Mhm.
to reject certain things from the world and like hone into who they are. So I think that's the kind of father I would be. And yeah, I'm just like it less like here's how to do your tax and I'm being so stereotypical. Less you do your taxes and like let's do some boxing lessons and like iron your clothes this way and like let's go mow the lawn. I'm just like I can't even be that kind of dad. I have a grass allergy. Like I'm not built for toxic masculinity or like what masculinity is supposed to be in so many ways. Um but yeah, I think that's what I'd say. What about you? What kind of dad would you be?
I don't know. This is a question I've been thinking about a lot as I've been entering this stage in my life where everyone's
Sure.
asking me like, "Are you getting married?
Right.
Are you going to have kids?" Like
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of very like big future stuff. Which is
Mm-hmm.
funny. I was having a conversation earlier today where someone was like, are you married?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Oh wow, like that's crazy. Like I'm like younger than you, and I'm married, and I have like a kid on the way." Um,
Okay.
and I was
Kudos
like,
for
"Yeah."
you.
And I was like, you've been in a relationship for how many years with your partner?" And they're like, "Oh, like like 3 or 4 years." And I was like, "Yeah, I've been with my partner for 8."
Right.
And we've cohabitated for
Mm-hmm.
longer than you've been together.
Hilarious. Let them know.
Like and I said that obviously in a very kind way because I really struggle to be passive aggressive or mean.
mm,
But in my head it was just like, what are you trying to get at?
the fuck? Yeah.
Because like it ain't that serious because
Mm-hmm.
we're I don't know. I really I love my life and I love my partner and
Mm-hmm.
this is what we're doing, and we're going at our own pace, and it just happens to outpace yours. Ha! So when it comes to the dad stuff, I don't know. It's like it's one of those things where like I'm debating whether I want to be a parent. Um,
Mm.
period.
Yeah.
If I were to be a father, I think I'd be someone who is kind and empathetic. Um, I don't think I'd end up being kind of the heavier, um, uh, heavy-handed, kind of disciplinarian person.
Yeah.
I don't think that's my nature. I'm very go with the flow, so I don't
Right.
think I'd be that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I love the idea of having the opportunity to like learn a new thing. And if we're talking about me having like a son, I guess, in the I guess, traditional sense,
Yeah.
Like if the kid's into baseball, I was dope. If the kid's into dolls, like let's talk about it. Like what's if you know whatever it is, let's like kind of figure it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think it was an interesting thing. There was like kind of like a backlash to Terry Crews a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Because he mentioned he's a very, he's a former NFL player. He's always this big
Mm-hmm.
muscly man, and he mentioned that he had gotten he me too'd somebody. He had
Right.
gotten
Mm-hmm.
assaulted
Mm-hmm.
by a man, and he's a big black man, and they're like that can't happen to you,
Right.
and it's like well it did, and
Right.
it was very emasculating, not because of his reaction, but because of the public's reaction to his just expressing that this happened to him and he felt violated.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. I kind of followed Terry Crews after that because I was like, you're an interesting person, and kind of breaking down some of these barriers. And something he said was like his son got really heavy into building computers and video games, and he was like, okay, I can do that. And he learned how to build computers, and now he has regular like gaming time with his son, and like that's not that hard because like it's something that might be interesting to him too, but like that's like the model, right? You want to meet everybody where they're at, but especially
Yeah.
your kids, your flesh and blood, or
Yeah.
adopted kids, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't matter. And we haven't even brought up, like gender identity or any of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're both in the place of if we had a kid who decided that they wanted to identify a different way than what they were born, then of course, like that's what we're doing, and it's full support.
Throw them a party. No.
But that is probably, I would say, maybe not the norm for maybe straight men of color.
Mm-hmm.
I don't even have any statistics on that. This is kind of a feeling I have. I feel like there is a traditional value there
Yeah.
that's kind of holding it back.
I think it's changing, but yeah, I would agree.
I
that was
definitely
a
think
thing.
it's changing. I definitely think it's changing.
I think the last thing I'd say is just there's this. I was watching Oprah a few years back, and she was interviewing this child psychologist, and she was talking about the relationship between parents and kids. And the one thing that she said that really stuck with me is parent the child you have. And like, there's just so much of like, people think it's a one size fits all type thing. Or again, you have like all these siblings where it's just like, the person is a person right in front of you. Parent them and like think about who is this child? What does this child need?
Right.
What does this child love? What does this child hate? And how can I be the best parent to this child? And then go from there. So yeah.
So let's take a quick break, and then we're going to talk about some examples of dads that are found in anime and how just how we feel about them. We'll be back from the break after this.
This is a story about old gods and forgotten lands, of secret societies and ancient vendettas. It's about betrayal and vengeance and love lost. But it's also about healing, hope, and the great loves we collect as we move through life. It's about magic. I know what it's like to have doubts. I know you've probably buried your belief of the fantastic beneath cynicism and pain, frustration, loss, and despair. I know that sometimes it feels like the world does all it can to smother the flame of your innocence and kidnap your curiosity. But as you listen to my story, more than anything else, I want you to know and remember this, even and most especially on your darkest and most trying days. Magic is real. It's yours. And it always has been. Now, I have a feeling we'll be meeting soon, so until then. Welcome back. So we've shared our thoughts and feelings about our own fathers or lack thereof. And now we get to dive into some of the best examples of the worst types of fathers we see in anime and other media and see if they can be redeemed. So how we've done this is we've kind of broken these dads up into like their cardinal sins and the character trope of their cardinal sins. And so the first one is disinterest. The dads who just don't care about their children, barely acknowledge them. They're just like, okay, I had a kid once, goodbye. Um, First up on this list, super representative of this one,
Yes.
is Jing Freaks from Hunter x Hunter. Let's talk about it. What do we know about this guy?
What a bastard. I did a full watch of Hunter x Hunter for the first time maybe last year.
Mhm.
And I was like, this kid, like he's looking for adventure and himself, but he's also looking for his dad.
Yeah.
And like when he gets punched in the face about it, like when Pops just gets like messed up about it, I'm like, yeah, like absolutely, that's
Yeah.
right. Because I was just kind of tired of the trope. He shows up and starts to figure it out towards the end of the anime, but I don't know. Like that kid is low key is like a psychopath. And
Dark shit happens. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
yeah, dark shit happens. And I think part of
changed.
it was not having a role model that shared interests. Like his aunt is his caretaker, right?
I don't remember. I think so.
Yeah. I think it's his aunt. It's a family member. It's like a cousin or an aunt. It's not not a mom. It's not a sister. His aunt is awesome and really loving. But like as soon as he leaves the nest, he sends love, but they don't actually like connect on like
which is why it was so hard for me to
doing.
remember who it is. Yeah.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So if he had had a role model, it would have I don't know, made it not as easy for him to go crazy as he does in later seasons.
And probably explains why he latched on to Homeboy so intensely, so deeply. What's the long-haired man's name again?
Long-haired
Beheaded guy. The guy who got beheaded, like his father's friend who got killed by the ants, which is why he went crazy. What's his name? You know who I'm talking about.
No, I know who you're talking about. Oh, the pro hunter who.
Yes.
I'm blanking on his name. I'll look it up. You talk, okay. And I'll
probably explains again why he latched on to him. Same thing with Netero when they were like playing that soccer game, like latches on to these father figures. I think what I loved about Jing getting punched in the face was him just like bring back shame, right? And I wonder sometimes with like these dads, particularly these anime ones, like how often are they like shamed for not being good fathers? And I think the answer is rarely. And I feel like, you know, they're known as like, because very often in these,
Kite is his name.
Kite. Yes, Kite. Yeah. Very often like these shonen dads are like not stay-at-home dads, right? Usually they're exemplars in some way, like right. What the son is trying to become. Totally. And because of that, like they get a lot of leeway. People's like, well, you know, your dad's the king, or your dad's this like famous warrior, and like he just can't be around, and he's a maverick, and you just got to let him doop 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 doop. And it's just like, no, who's holding these people accountable? And I think once you do that, then yeah, you get some changed behavior. So yeah, honestly, that leads me to one of my ones that I think is just disinterested in his child and should be shamed for it more, but isn't. Sasuke. Yeah. Not a lot of people watch Boruto, but we all know that Sasuke in a lot of ways is an emotionally stunted man.
Yes, he is.
And I think that's fine with your wife to a degree because she's choosing that. And I love Sakura down. Okay, I'm a Sakura defender, and we'll do that. But at the same time, I'm just like, ma'am, you deserve someone who will celebrate you from the rooftops, and that's not that man.
Yeah.
And you know, she has a kid with him, and you know, in Boruto, I think Sarada first meets him when she's like 12 or 13, some shit like that. And he doesn't recognize who he is first. He attacks her. She's like, who this girl? And she's just like, Daddy, it's me. And he's like, oh shit, my bad. And I'm just like, that's a whole problem. Again, if you want to be a deadbeat husband, Again, y'all are both choosing to be in that relationship. Um,
Yeah.
but your child, not to mention, you were like the last of your clan. She is going to have very specific changes and things
Yes.
that like only you can talk about, and you just like out here being on like no. So everyone gives Naruto shit for being a bad dad, although he had a momentary blip of being a bad father after being a great father, which is why his kids were so hurt when he was being a bad dad. But Sasuke was literally absentee. Now, in fairness, he has gotten better. That was like a wake up call for him. He was like, I should be around a little bit more.
A
So
little bit.
good,
Just a little bit.
good. But he still deserves to be dragged for a long time.
I think Sakura should have ended up with Lee.
Unpopular opinion, Lee is annoying, right? You know what I mean? Like, Lee is a good person.
Yeah.
He is annoying. And I'm just like, even though he likes Sakura, I would never see a world in which Sakura would like
I think she would have whittled him down a little bit, maybe calmed him down a little bit. Like I think it could have worked if maybe if Neji had survived. Maybe I don't know. I think that Lee's like stick to itiveness, positivity, all that stuff would have just been really nice for her life versus the motherfucker that's just not around at all and having to raise children on her her own.
Yeah.
Speaking of completely disinterested fathers who only show up after the kid's about 11 or so. Gendo Ikari from Neon Genesis Evangelion. Jay, I know you don't watch Neon Genesis Evangelion, but in the first episode, during this kind of like apocalypse, Shinji, the main character, shows up at his dad's work basically, and because he had been sent for by his father, and he was like, "Oh, why is my dad? I haven't talked to my dad in years. Like, I wonder what's been going on. He's been raised by like a family friend." And Gendo's like, "I have a use for you, so I called for you."
Child.
Like, and then the person who ends up being like a kind of a mother figure for him says, "Get in the robot, Shinji." That's where that comes from. Get in the robot, Shinji. Like, oh, Gendo Ikari is cold. He's a cold motherfucker, like straight up. And honestly, that entire show, that entire character's psyche is kind of based off of his relationships or lack thereof with the people around him, specifically his father and lack of mother because she passed away when he was very young, and all this other stuff. So, Gendo Ikari is like the worst kind of dad because he actively knows that he's causing harm and does not care because he's focused on like another goal.
No, thank you. I don't even want to get into this next person too much because I have really turned on this man. But Charles Xavier, very famously in the comics, because I don't think we've seen Legion that much in the shows, right?
There was a Legion show that the first
but even
season
Charles wasn't in there. Yeah.
No, he wasn't. But you do see his son while he's fucked up.
Yeah. And again, where's his daddy, right? And it's just like nowhere to be found. And even honestly, I feel like Charles fits into actually a couple of these tropes of what a bad father is. But I also think he's not a great person. That's where I've landed with Charles. And I honestly have to say that like it was jarring to reach that conclusion because for so long, you know, you feel like, yeah, Charles is a paragon of justice and order and decency. And like, he's all about like, be good, be calm, like, let's heal. But like, I feel like the older we get, the more we see that he's like narcissistic and very like manipulative and like holds people hostage to his idealism and then will like manipulate them if they don't align with it. And it's just like, you're the problem, Charles. Oh my God. Like you are an issue. So yeah.
He might be fighting for good. That doesn't make him good.
What's the next trope?
The fathers that treat children as extensions of themselves. So they don't have any agency. They are just kind of there to
carry on
fulfill their father's dreams, carry on legacy, They are just a vessel for the father's ambition. The namesake of this episode, Jay, is whom?
Yeah, it's Endeavor, and this is what's so interesting. Part of me doesn't want Endeavor to be on this list, right? Only because
Interesting.
if we're talking season 1, season 2, yes, but I'm just like, this is a man who has fully given himself over to being a better man, husband, and father, who has acknowledged with complete like truth his wrongdoings, how he failed. We saw as he was experiencing heartbreak once Dobby revealed who he was, that like this is a man who actually did love his children even, and how much his being a bad father was in response to him being traumatized as a man that lost his child. And again is like putting in the work. And so I'm just like, I don't want to dismiss the fact that he was an abusive, not present, like emotionally father and husband. And yet I'm just like, and I guess this is the tension. He's doing the work, you know what I mean? And like his children have no obligation to like want to return or have a relationship with him. Absolutely not. But I think he's being very genuine in his ability to whatever. And I think it's just like the whole growth versus fixed mindset thing for me, where I'm just like, the growth mindset part of me is just like, this is a man who is trying to be better. And I think it's already proven himself to be better. It still has room to grow. But yeah, he's so tricky. He's a tricky one.
Yeah, honestly, like his character arc is almost like AOT levels of like complicated. Like because like, you know, the first couple of seasons we thought Attack on Titan was one thing, and then the last couple of seasons it's a completely other thing, right?
Right.
We thought that this character was being built up as the paragon of what you shouldn't be as a hero,
Right.
Because he was self-absorbed, doing saving people for himself, not simply to save others, or that was the character that was presented. And then we see that he actually does care about the safety of others. He does care about his family. He was in a dark place, and hurt people. I guess the question is, and I don't want to answer this right now, but can an abuser be redeemed? And is it a case of just we have to hold these two things at the same time? Like you did bad things and were a bad person. You are also actively trying to be better. And you're not forcing anyone to do anything that they don't want to do. And if they want to try to heal some of their relationship with you, you're open to that and are actively striving towards it. Maybe we're just living in that messy thing, but I think that's Endeavor is probably one of the best written characters or most interesting characters in My Hero. And honestly, one of the only reasons that I kept watching, because I wanted to know, after All Might stepped down as number one hero, how Endeavor was going to show up, because this is what he always wanted, but he didn't want it this way. So now he has to change.
And I think that he stopped wanting it for a while, because so much of what makes Endeavor so interesting is that like All Might was somebody he both respected, admired, and resented, and was really working hard to catch up to and surpass. And then it became abundantly clear to him that he would not, right? He was just like, this is a person that like, I cannot reach. He is just number one. I'm number two, but I'm not a close number two. You know what I mean? And if he wasn't around, I would be a great number one, and people work under me and they respect me as a leader. But like, there's a huge gap here. And I think for someone who is as prideful as he was, I think he's somebody who's very like, about merit, which I think in this hero world is all of them. It was a hard pill to swallow, which then he takes his insecurities and projects them onto his family and tries to create now a perfect thing. And I think what we can't lose with Endeavor too, not to dismiss his behavior, is the context that he exists in, because he had what's called a quirk marriage. And the fact that there's a term for it, speaks to the fact that there are people who are trying to, have power and do these things. And like,
Yeah.
that's a thing. And so like, I wonder how much of like a societal conditioning, this need for strength, this pride around, his family, all those things, also led to all of this. And again, I think the real heartbreak of it is the way that Dobby died was trying to meet his ideal, right?
Yeah.
Where he was just like, it's not you. You can't be my perfect vision. You're being burned by your flames. It's not you. I'm so sorry. After pushing him for so hard, and then to lose his child, knowing that it was his fault because he was pushing him, and that his child wanted to make him proud, I think broke him in such a way. And what's sad is like, it could have made him more humble. It could have made him relax with his kids, but it kind of did the opposite. And just like, I think that was, I think it became like, I have to make this worth it. Now that I have a child that can do it, I have to make sure that like this doesn't happen again, and that he's. I think there's some people when they're broken that they become weak, and there are other people when they're broken and they feel like now I have to overcompensate with strength, and it's very much what he seemed to be doing. So yeah, I think he's very interesting on this list. Very interesting. Now you put Goku here. I'd love to hear.
I put Goku in a few places.
yeah, I'm seeing that because I would have had him firmly and disinterested. But why did you put him in this one as well?
Well, I think the culmination of the Cell Games arc for him is that he has been training Gohan up this entire time to be the hero, to be an extension of himself.
Right.
To be someone, because he's seen the strength that can save the day, because he's not going to be able to do it all the time, right? And he did not realize that his son isn't a fighter.
Right.
So therefore, if he didn't realize that his son isn't a fighter, it's because he was seeing his son as an extension of himself.
Right.
So that's why Goku is here. I do think Goku has some disinterest. There are moments where he's around, and when he's around, he's an active, fun father. So like, I'm not saying it's all the time. I think one of my favorite moments in the anime that isn't in the manga is when Goku comes back after for the beginning of the Majin Buu arc for the World Martial Arts Tournament, and he hasn't met Goten yet because he passed away before Goten was born. And when he kind of peeks and like kind of like sees him and kind of moves the crowd so that he can have a moment with his son, and that moment was very heartwarming. And you know why it's so heartwarming? Because we don't see it from Goku.
Right.
We don't often see him be like overly affectionate with his sons. Sometimes with Chi-Chi, but not with his sons. So I do find that Goku's going to appear many times in this list, and it's funny because there are little bits of his fatherhood. Because there is a positive side to his fatherhood where he is an extremely supportive and loving man. So he's an interesting case. He's like the epitome of an 80s, 90s dad. There when he has to be, for the most part, but when it counts, when the kids could use a bit of extra support, not so much. Now,
in universe, is he a bad father, or is that just something that like we read as an audience?
I think we read it as an audience. I think in universe, I think he's fine. I will say this: Krillin's a way better dad.
Right.
Krillin's around. And obviously there are some step parents that we're going to talk about later in that universe that are the epitome of supportive and excellent fathers. But
okay,
Jay, what's our next category?
So this next one, these folks, kind of see their children as expendable or as just things, like not really as fully realized humans, right? Just like things or stuff that they can use to their own ends, and no one will be upset about it because I birthed them. They're just my tissue, not like a person. And we have very famously Shu Tucker on this list.
Yep. Can't make a bad dad list without Shu Tucker.
I mean, just he's experimenting. I just wanted to see what would happen. You know what I mean? And like, yeah, this is what happened. And then we also have Charles Z. Britannia from Code Geass, which I haven't seen. So why is he such a bad dad?
He he is a king,
Okay.
and like one of the all you know at the beginning of the series is that the main character Lelouch is a banished prince,
Mm-hmm.
and that no one's supposed to know that he's a banished prince. It turns
Okay.
out his dad just like straight yeeted him out of the kingdom for like not a very good reason. um,
Okay.
and just decided that he wasn't worthy of being anywhere near the line of succession. Um, so he was expendable because he had a bunch of other kids that were
Oh boy.
ahead in succession, and it was fine.
Okay.
So, you know, normal shit.
Okay. This next section, I added it, and I called it ops, where these niggas is trying to kill their kids. Okay, like actively, their kids are their enemies. Okay, which is wild to me.
Yeah.
Because it's not like, oh, I'm the good guy and like my kid is evil and bad and like unfortunately I have to fight him for the good of the world. It's just like I don't like you,
Mm-hmm.
which is crazy. And we have two here. We have Rasa the Kazakage of the Sand Village, who ironically does have like a. It kind of also fits because like they put the one tailed demon into him, um, to make him strong, and so that kind of speaks like the children are extensions of themselves. Like he wanted to have a stronger child, but then the demon goes wild, and so then the kid becomes the op, which then ironically also makes him a bad father to his other two children, of which he just pays no attention to because he's too busy trying to kill the other one. So, ugh. I mean, there's a semi nice healing moment that they have during the war.
It was weird.
Yeah, where they kind of bring that relationship to conclusion. It's like, huh, okay,
I guess.
all right, because he's just like, oh, you're alive. Wait, these people follow you? That's crazy. Because I was trying to kill you because you were horrible, but I guess you're not horrible now. Oh, all right. Well, my bad.
We're good.
Right.
What?
As long as you turned out all right, that's all I wanted. Okay, I'm good. We can wrap this up. It's just like,
Jesus.
oh boy. And then of course the number one hater, Ozai. Just
Ugh.
I think also thought of his children being but it's so interesting because I don't know that he thought of Zuko as an extension of himself, but more of his will. You know what I mean? There always
Mm-hmm.
felt to me, at least, that Ozai was cut off from his children. Like clearly doesn't love them. I don't know that he loves anybody. He's a
Right.
sociopath. And they were more so tools to carry out his will because he is a supreme. I remember like when he was going to be the Phoenix King, I was like, yeah, well, you could be Fire Lord. I don't care. It did feel very like throwaway because it's
Like,
just like,
yeah, just basically,
I've
yeah.
ascended beyond that. And like, sure, you can have the scraps because I guess you earned them or whatever.
Right.
Yeah. How are you feeling about Ozai and Rasa?
Rasa, I mean, that was low key one of the saddest stories um, in the original run of Naruto. Getting
Mm-hmm.
Gaara's backstory, you're like, oh, you're actually pretty well adjusted.
Right.
Like all
Given the
considering.
situation.
Yeah, given the
Yeah.
situation, you have a literal demon inside of you, and your father tried
Mm-hmm.
to kill you, and the only person that showed you love tried to kill you because he was an
Right.
assassin sent by your father.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're doing
Ooh.
pretty all right. You have an okay relationship with your siblings.
Yeah.
Like, you know what?
Who fear you. Yeah.
For who fear you, but also do love you, and you do care
Right.
about them, and all this.
Yeah.
So no, I think guess what? It's one of the things that makes Gaara's arc so amazing because he learns to
Yeah.
love. He learns to love through
Yeah.
friendship. Power of friendship survives all that kind of bullshit. And then
But then
Ozai
gets a
is just a bad
horrible
kid.
haircut. I hate his haircut. Have you seen his grown man haircut? It's the worst.
Oh, does he have the swoop?
It's a
He
little
has
swoop thing, and I'm
yeah.
just like, why y'all do
He
Gara like
looks like he's
that?
about to like break it down in the
Ugh,
pit,
just
in a pop punk concert.
mhm, thank you.
Like, sugar, we're going down. Like, like
Right. Ugh.
I don't know why they did that, but
Oh boy.
and then Ozai's he's just a bastard.
Yeah.
He's just an evil human being. He's like the epitome of a mustache twirling villain, and the only reason it works is because he shows up so little. And the villains underneath him, aka Azula, are so wonderfully written
It's true.
that it doesn't quite matter that he truly is just evil for evil's sake.
You know,
Yeah.
no, go ahead.
The argument that the propagandists from the Fire Nation use is like, we're giving security to the world by spreading our empire,
Yeah,
with the classic colonization argument, right?
right.
Um, and I don't know if Jose believes that, or if he's like crazy enough to believe that,
Yeah,
or if he just straight up wants power, or if he was so fucked up by his grandfather and father
right.
pushing down on the war. He was the second
Yeah.
child. He wasn't even supposed to be the Fire Lord, right?
I know. That's why he's so fascinating, because I'm just like, Sozin and Azulan, like, obviously we don't know much about Azulan, but I'm just like, Sozin was so interesting in, like, he's scarier than Ozai in a way, because he seems like he's just as strong, but he's like, Sozin is Azula and Ozai combined, because he had like and then someone else that actually has like a shred of emotional something, because he has like Azula's cunning, Ozai's power, and then because he was in love with Roku and they were slapping cheeks, an ability to actually love, you know what I mean? That he then uses to his advantage. And I think, again, Ozai is, I did. I waited for you to catch it. So there it is.
Hold on, you because it is canon that you're just gonna slip that by. It is canon.
They were both married because they had responsibilities, but they were clapping cheeks.
Avatar Roku loved his wife,
and Roku. I'm not saying that's mutually exclusive.
Okay, you're saying Roku is bi.
Yes.
And you're saying that Lord Sozin is also bi?
And hates that about himself. And I think Roku would have accepted it, and they could have had a whole thing. But again, you know, they have their lines to think about. I think they were very much forced apart because of the roles that they played in that world. And I think
please clip that, please.
Sure. I stand by it. And to me, it's very much like Charles and Magneto, especially with this last episode, not to bring it back there. I was just like, when are they kissing? This whole thing.
It was very queer coded.
So much like all the drama that's happening in the world is because these two men could not be gay together. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is why like even straight men suffer from fucking, all nonsense. So yes, that was a thing. But I think what was interesting though about Ozai, and it actually makes me think about Uncle Iroh. I thought about a little bit later, we'll talk about good dads, and I thought about that, but I didn't put him down for a couple of reasons. One, I was just like, we don't actually see him function as a father. Because his son is dead. And then two people would argue like, well, Zuko. And while yes, he was obviously a father figure, I had issues with how Iroh was, particularly in early seasons. I think it was clear that he was taking the long play with Zuko in his rehabilitation, but there was still to me sometimes a little bit too much of like complicitness. I say all this to say, Iroh, we all know had a character change, again, that we didn't see. That happened after his son died, and before that he was this like villainous dragon person, and so it just makes me think of like, how were they raised? Ozai, I think, was probably afraid of Iroh at some point, because Ozai gives very much like, I would kill someone who was in my way, but didn't seem to try that with Iroh, and was just like, okay, brother, like, you know what I mean? Like, Iroh was that nigga, it seemed, and Ozai was just like,
no, that's a really interesting take. And it's something I kind of hope since we're getting 2 more seasons of the live action, I hope they explore that, because I think the strongest parts of the live action, I think I've said this before, were the things that they added that we hadn't seen before. Were those little bits of Zuko and Iroh and their relationship after Iroh's son passed away. I hope we do get those little bits, because that stuff's fascinating. And you're right. It's like I read a book series called the Stormlight Archive. It's a Brandon Sanderson thing, and there's a character who, like, very overtly you learn is a war criminal. He is just a war criminal, and people fucking love him. And then there's another character who also committed war crimes, and everyone's like, No, never. That guy fucking sucks. Never. Never ever. And it's like
In universe, people say that, or readers say that.
readers.
Got it. Okay.
It's like, what the fuck are we talking about here? Like, I'm pretty sure Dalinar Kholin, the first character, hundreds of thousands of people, like hundreds of thousands of people.
PR.
Yeah,
PR.
seriously.
That's what it comes down to.
This other cat, not he killed he kills a bunch of people. He kills a bunch of important people, but like maybe a couple hundred, and it's like no, absolutely not. And I think there is a little bit of that bias with Iroh because he's such a lovable character now.
Right.
I'm gonna speed through these next two because I do want to get to some good dads.
Yeah.
Dads that choose their ideals or the greater good over their children.
Yeah.
Charles Xavier also belongs in this list.
I'm just like, is that the reason why he did? Is that the reason why he doesn't fuck with his kids?
He would choose. He would choose.
That's true.
Like mutant and human. If he had to sacrifice all of the X-Men to do it, I don't think he would say it that way.
He would,
but I'm pretty sure he would still choose the harmony between mutants and humans, and he would sacrifice like Jean and Scott to do it. Yeah. And he's indoctrinated Jean and Scott enough that they would be like, "Yes, sir, may have another."
Like, you know what I thought of the other day?
Yeah,
when I was just thinking about how much I hated Charles and like how the stakes right now for the mutants are so high. We're like literally again genocide, right? Where I'm just like, what would it take for him to go into Cerebro and just like change the vibe? You know what I mean? Of just like, mutants are cool. Mutants aren't dangerous. And his answer would be like, I would never. That's manipulative. Beto, whenever he needs to go fuck up Magneto and get in his mind all of a sudden, he'll do it. And so I'm just like, it's giving inconsistent. Inconsistent.
No, he's a bit of a broken character because of how strong we can get into that all day. We discussed Charles. Let's talk about another very important dad, Grisha Yeager from Attack on Titan. I know you saw some of Attack on Titan, but you didn't get far enough to see what this character does.
He's Aaron's dad, correct? The scientist? Mm-hmm. Okay, I know that. And I know that like he, for the plot twist things, was related to that, and how Aaron is part of that. That's also related to that. So,
right. You get some backstory in that he was part of a cause he was part of a peoples that were disenfranchised, and he was part of a cause to bring those people out of the slums, basically. And at a certain point, he does like something pretty unspeakable to Aaron, in my opinion, to forward that cause. It's unspeakable to me. Unspeakable to me in my mind, and I'm trying not to spoil you in case you ever go for it, because like as a father, I think something you're supposed to do is always try to set up your children for success, regardless of what's going on. And in that moment, he did not choose Aaron's success; he chose the cause's success.
Yeah.
And that's like number one sin for me as a father. I think when you choose yourself for something else over your kids' like literal physical safety, for sure. Goku's also on this list, but he's always on this list. Plays favorites.
Yeah. Ozai prefers Azula. We know because Azula is like made in his image. Aang, a major plot point in season 3 of Korra, that Aang was, and again, there's a reason. I would honestly say in some ways it does tie to ideals of greater good, where he was just like, this is a progenitor of my people and the culture, and like I have to make sure that he knows this. But a lack of balance there with his other children. Yep. And then, did you watch Blood of Zeus on Netflix? Okay,
No.
you should. The second season just dropped. A really good show. And what's really interesting is we're used to Zeus being portrayed as a bad, absent father because he's a whore, right? And what this show did was it really doubled down on his being a whore. Like it didn't run away from that, but they did not make him a bad father, which was really interesting. Um, so much so that it caused some drama because his other godchildren, like Ares, is just like, okay, so you're not gonna hang out with me, but your little human that you had that you cheated on my mom, like that's your nigga now, like that's who you gonna hang out with. So yeah, there was a little bit of that, but yeah. So let's take a little break and wash off this negativity, and then come back with something better. I think.
I think so. Yeah. Okay, and we're back. So, who's doing it right?
Yeah.
Who are some fathers these dads could like actually learn from?
Mm, mm.
There are many come to mind, but Jay, why don't you start us off?
Sure. I think Tenzin, again from the Avatar universe, was a really good dad.
Yeah,
He, in some ways, I think did it better than Aang because he had to
way better than
balance.
A. Yeah,
Yeah, I'm just like he had to balance being the father of this entire nation and kind of
right.
preserving all of those things, but still was, I think, a really good father to three very different children, three children that were not
Yes,
like him in so many ways.
yes,
Um, and he still was present for them and loved them all. And I thought that was really beautiful. So and I think became a really great father figure for Korra as well. I almost put Korra's dad here because I also thought he was a great father
yeah,
also.
oh yeah,
I was like, not like really great dads in Korraverse, but like, yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, Tenzin was great.
yeah. I find Akora's dad. I'm blanking on his name. He kind of he comes off as one note.
Right.
Um, but that's so funny because I think him and Korra kind of share that trait in that like
Mm-hmm.
they will punch something to make it work.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that's just
She, her
strange.
daddy's good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's real. Um, Piccolo. It was gonna
Black
come up.
father. Yeah. We knew it was
Yeah,
going to happen.
Black stepfather.
Yeah.
Uh, Piccolo is more of a father to Gohan than literally anybody.
Right.
People think like Krillin is kind of an adult figure in his life. They're homies. They're basically like brothers.
I can't.
They Piccolo like okay, he steals this kid. Not a
Mm.
great start. Understandable.
Yeah.
But what does he
Playblack
do?
does not approve of kidnapping. Legal just messaged me in my ear and wanted to make sure that I stated that clearly. And so, again, Playblack does not condone or cape for kidnapping. Continue, Miguel.
Yeah. What does Piccolo do as soon as he realizes that Gohan is in over his head? He pushes him to try and succeed or fail,
Hmm.
but is always there if he's going to fall or literally hurt himself or die. If he's hungry,
Hmm.
he gets him food. If he's not clothed, he clothes him. It
Hmm.
sounds like the basics, but
Right.
he's also like at this point still a rehabilitated, barely rehabilitated villain, right?
Right.
And through his working with this kid, he develops this trust and love that goes so deep throughout the rest of the series that when Goku, the children's are extensions of themselves, dad,
Right.
doesn't realize that Gohan isn't a fighter. Piccolo's the one that breaks it down for him and says, he isn't. I trained this kid, and he's
Right.
powerful, but he's not a fighter.
It's not
And
about that life.
yeah, he wants to read books. Like, what are you doing? Why are you
Wants to
putting him
paint.
in this situation? And yeah, I think Piccolo is an OG great dad.
Yeah. My next one is Shiro Fujimoto from Blue Exorcist. He was the top exorcist, the paladin in the universe, and one raised two kids that were not his, and not even just so. Okay, these kids are sons of the devil, his biggest enemy. Okay, and he raised them both, and knowing that one of them has more devil stuff in him, and then watching kind of the effect that, so in this universe, uh you can't see like demons and bad creatures unless like you have what's called a taint. And most people get that because I know it might be a temp taint. That's hilarious because I might have shortened that myself. It's called something. And most people like get it later, like if they're in an attack, or they get it on purpose if they're trained to be an exorcist. But because Rin has a twin brother, that little boy had it in utero, and so was born like seeing monsters and creatures and all this stuff, and really sad. It was really sad, and was terrified all the time. He was like, "What am I seeing?" And so, just Shiro was a great father, and like helped raise that son to like find his own strength, to be his own person. But then also with his devil son, we find that like basically like he had to, I'm like gonna fuck this up a little bit, but like had to kind of stay pure of heart and not ever be negative, and have like a real tight lid on his emotions to not let the devil in, because the devil was constantly trying to kill him. And there's a moment where the protagonist basically, like in the pilot episode, is just like, "I hate you. I hope you die. You're a horrible father." And Shiro just has a moment where he like slaps him in the face, like, "You don't mean that." And that like moment of weakness of just like showing his emotion, the devil won, took him over and killed him. Second episode. And it just showed that like he had worked for 16 years to maintain this assault, to raise these two boys with love and care and affection and kindness, to help them be the best version of himself. Again, not his children. And in defiance, arguably, of like the system that he worked under. So, he was a good man. He was a good man. He was a good man, Savannah. I'm sad that we lost him.
That's real, man.
Yeah.
Shit. Lloyd Forger, Spy Family.
That's interesting because I saw him on the lists and didn't put him on my list for a reason. So I'm interested to hear your reasons.
Lloyd, to me, is he's kind of similar to Piccolo, in that he was doing this all in a very utilitarian way.
Yeah.
Like he adopted Anya for a purpose, and he was planning on very coldly like dumping her off somewhere or doing whatever. And then he saw that she was in need and adapted to that, and is just slowly tricking himself in constantly by saying, "This is for the mission. This is for the mission. This is because you love this girl and you have turned into her father." And like, it's funny, like he wants her to get good grades for the mission. He also just wants her to get good grades because he loves this kid. And it's the charm of that show is just watching him fall in love with these two people.
Right.
And them fall in love with him.
Yeah.
And it's a beautiful thing. So I think Lloyd would murder for this kid without any issue. And to make sure she's safe and to make sure she's like feels good and is happy. So I think Lloyd has turned into a great father out of making himself think it's for the mission, but he just loves those kids.
Honestly, that's why I struggle with it, because I'm waiting for it to be intentional. And I think we know that he loves her and we know why he does these things. But I'm just like, until he knows and decides with that mindset, I'm just like, that's where I resist. Because if you were to say you're a good father, knowing like if his supervisor said that, he would be like, no, it's just a mission. You know what I mean? Like in his mind, he's not being a father. He's being the team leader of this whatever. And so he would be there for me, but not until he gets some clarity there.
Yeah. I'm also not finished with season 2 yet. So I don't know where he's at.
You got season 2 and a movie.
You're right. Oh shit, I missed a movie. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
What's your next name?
My last one is from Dr. Stone. It is Byakuga Ishigami. What's his face's dad. And let me tell you the feat here. So the world of Dr. Stone is that all of a sudden one day, there's like this electromagnetic wave that goes around the world and turns all the people to stone. And then 10,000 years later, our protagonist wakes up. Senku wakes up and is determined to bring the world back with the power of science because he's a genius. So his father was an astrophysicist and an astronaut and was in space on a trip when the wave happened. And so when they came down, they had avoided the wave. And when they came down, they kind of had to restart society themselves. And so Senku finds this civilization and becomes a part of it. And his father had left him a message and had told stories about him, with demanded that they be passed down because he knew that his son would wake up and he knew that his son would use his mind to like save the world, and left this message for his kid to set him up for success. And it was just like that beauty of just the beauty of their relationship, the beauty of like him believing in his son across centuries and millennia, knowing and trusting in his son's intelligence and his prowess was really powerful and really beautiful. And they just allegedly they're not related, like it's not actually his son, but like they dead ass look alike. But just like adopted him and raised him. But yeah, they just really great dad, a really great dad.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's great. I got a couple more here. I'm just gonna rapid fire him. Maze Hughes,
yeah, yeah.
Full Metal Alchemist, wonderful doting father. Unfortunately, passes away before he's able to really be there for as long as he would like to. But I think for the bits of him that we see as a father, he loves his family so much, and he's such a good dad. And the hole he left was huge. So pour one out for Maze Hughes for sure. Thor's from Vinland Saga. I know you haven't seen it, but Thor's was a very violent man who was like a Viking warlord and decided to leave that life because he didn't want to lead a life of violence, and did everything to dissuade his son from leading a life of violence, sacrificed himself to save his son. And, you know, even though Thor is like, Thorfinn, rather, the protagonist, doesn't heed his father's warnings. That is a through line throughout the entire series, and he does eventually get to that place where he understands what his father meant, and that his father really was trying to guide him to a life of love and of peace.
And peace,
and then a fun one, Food Wars, which underneath all the weird sexual shit is actually a great show, especially the first couple of seasons. If you can get past that with the weird sexual shit, which I know is a hard ask, I do recommend it, especially for the recipes, because like they did research a lot of actual cooking techniques.
Okay.
So it is fun to see like how are they going to pull this one out. Like,
sure.
Especially as someone who likes to cook. Is Joichiro Yukihira, the main protagonist's father, who raised a son in a restaurant, taught him how to make beautiful, amazing food, said, I am going to go do my dreams. I'm going to send you off to a place secretly that I used to be one of the top chefs at. And you have all the tools to succeed. Go do it. If you can survive there, you can be a better chef than me. Challenges his son while also supporting his son, and then sends him off to go succeed. And then when he needs help, he's there for him. I think that's all you could ever want in a father, honestly. Jay, I'm actually we had a little game scheduled here. I don't think we need it.
Okay.
And I think the game for y'all, maybe I'll make a little
talk
short
to your own
about it.
fathers or be a better father. I mean, I'm kidding.
Yeah. Maybe I'll make a little short about it. But the game was who is more redeemable as a father, and there was a couple of comparisons. I'm going to run through them real quick, and I might clip this for later. Is Ging Freaks or Von Hohenheim from FMA a more redeemable father? Firelord Ozai or Charles Z. Britannia? Who is more redeemable? Grisha Jaeger or Endeavor from MHA? And then the Devil's one. Gendo Ikari versus Shao Tucker. Who's more redeemable? I think we'll post something on social media and we'll see what y'all think about that. Maybe we'll talk about it next time.
Cool. A quick shout out before we wrap up. One of our early listeners and closest friends, Jasmine, has been telling us all about one of her coworkers that's been taking a listen. So shout out to Catherine. Glad to hear that you're listening. And Jazz wanted us to make sure that we acknowledge that. So yeah, thanks for listening. Keep listening. Tell your friends.
Yeah, we're always down for the community. If the community would like to name itself, we are always down to listen to you. It's like we're like good fathers. And with that, we hope you've enjoyed this episode of Playblack. Make sure to hit the subscribe button, leave a review. You can follow us on Instagram at Playblack Podcast. Same thing on TikTok. Make sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel so you can see our beautiful faces. Mm-hmm. And yeah, be there for your peoples. That is the theme that we're trying to get at. Yeah. Because anime's been there for us. Dads always haven't. But you can be there for your peoples, regardless of your parentage or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool.
Okay. Bye.